Par, welcome to the Wellness Lab. It's a pleasure to have
Hey,
you.
Ben. Thank you so much. It's good to be here.
I know I'm happy to have this conversation with you. So I just want to open up here for our listeners. For those who don't know yourself or the work you do, can you explain your career background to them and how being a young person in the corporate world played a role?
Well, I would like to begin off by saying that I'm glad you've called me a young person because I'm still young at heart, even though it's been quite some time since I've joined the corporate world. And to give a quick background, I completed my master's back in 2018. Since then, I have been working across a bunch of different roles and responsibilities, all majorly driven towards sales, essentially. I started off my career working with a startup, so I have experience working in a content marketing agency.
Mm-hmm.
After that, I moved on to working with a bigger company, which was still an SME, which is a small and a medium enterprise. I worked there for almost 3 years as a key account manager. After that, I moved on to working for an IT tech company, which has global presence and has offices in Ontario and Vancouver as well. So that company is HCL Tech. I worked there for almost 2 years. After that, I have worked with two organizations here in Canada. Most recently, I'm currently working with the University of Toronto within the Arts and Science Co-op department as an external relations outreach coordinator.
Okay. And how do you think working all those different roles earlier in your career, how do you think that influenced you and shaped you?
I think so. One of the best parts about being able to take up multiple different roles and wearing these hats in different capacities helped
Mm-hmm.
me understand how a business works and
Mm-hmm.
not just learning, from a siloed point of view of just knowing the sales or the marketing or the operations part of a business, but getting that holistic view of actually seeing what
Mm-hmm.
truly affects a business. So things like understanding the concept of working capital and the impact it has on our business, understanding the impact of the collaboration between a sales and a marketing team,
Mm-hmm.
understanding why HR gets so much of flack, right? So I believe that's the kind of thing that I really like about my own career is being able to
Mm-hmm.
work across different industries, different capacities, and different levels of organizations.
Mm-hmm. And a challenge that in our pre-discussion you mentioned you faced early on in your career was feeling like you had to change your personality to match these different workplaces and these different work environments. So how does that personality adaptation, how does that become mentally tiring over time?
I believe it is difficult, I would say, for sure, because for someone who was just new into the working environment or a work culture, I didn't essentially know how to get around things. And I would always just fall back to my parents for guidance. And if I had any cousins who were older than me, who had been in the industry working for quite some time, I would look up to them for guidance as well. And it gets challenging because every organization is built differently and every individual that you're going to be working with is
Mm-hmm.
built differently and they own come from their own backgrounds and experiences. The best way I sort of was able to, how do I say, like how I was able to overcome this challenge was by being able to adapt myself to the working style of every individual that I worked with.
Mm-hmm.
And this has been, I think so, by far the greatest advice that I remember my father gave me initially, that when you're trying to build your career in the initial stages, you
Mm-hmm.
have to work as your manager or your boss does. You have
Mm-hmm.
to sort of mirror their efforts so that it also becomes easier for them to give you more and more responsibility. It's almost like they see a little bit of themselves in you.
Exactly. And then with that responsibility and that task at hand early on in the career, it can be quite a lot of pressure to have to be that flexible, especially when you're not as experienced. So how might someone learn to manage just on the more psychological side, just the pressure of it and all those expectations?
I think so. One has to look at various ways of, uh, dealing with that kind of pressure because the pressure is real. And
Mm-hmm.
a couple of ways that I would go about it was ensuring that I am remaining physically active throughout the day, right? So even while I'm at work, I just don't tend to sit at a single place, even if it's a desk job, right? I don't tend to sit at one place throughout the day. I keep moving around, every 20 minutes, just get up, go for a quick walk, just sort of get used to the environment. Also, once I used to be back home, I used to play a lot. So find something that works for you. It can be any physical activity like sports or just walking out there or going to the gym, etc. Right? Get something that puts you in a zone which is beyond the work, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the times that I used to struggle with initially was that I used to get a lot of my work back home. Now, what that means is that, a lot of pressure, a lot of stress used to come back home, and I used to just dwell on that. And it would
Mhm.
ruin my entire evening and not essentially prepare me for the next day, right? I would go
Mhm.
to bed very gloomy, or how do I put it? Like really tired, and I would wake up
Mhm.
tired. So I
Yeah.
realized that if I step out of the house after office, it just
Mhm.
helps me reset. And yeah, I used
Yeah.
to go to bed early. That used to help a lot
Yeah.
overcome any sort of, psychological stress that I was going through. And
Mhm.
talking a lot, I think so that makes a lot more difference as well. Talk to your family, talk to your parents, whoever is your closest aide, who you can sort of,
Mhm.
share everything with, just reach out to them.
Yeah, I think that's so important as well because what I want to make clear is that we're not saying that there aren't going to be pressures and expectations in the
Yeah.
workplace. That's an inevitability. That's always going to happen. But just knowing yourself and knowing your own strategies and experimenting just with what works for you to manage that, I think is so important. And then just strategy that worked for myself is one place to become a lot more comfortable in the workplace is to have a good relationship with your supervisor as well. You said, while that can be extremely helpful, for a lot, that can be a source of nervousness or anxiety going into those meetings and having tough conversations about, hey, I'm having these challenges in the workplace, or I'm these expectations that are being put on me, or I'm really having a tough time with. What can we do about that? So, how would you help someone get better at those conversations and just feel more comfortable having those talks?
Honestly, that is one feeling that's never going to go away, I feel, because every time you step into a room where you are having or where you are about to have a conversation with your supervisor, it's going to be a little tricky because you don't know what they are expecting of you. Not in the sense that you go there, unprepared with what your
Hmm.
deliverables are and what was asked of you to be, to be performing on, but in the sense that there's always this anxiety, and I still face it till day. The
Hmm.
thing that I try doing, and that has sort of worked for me, is being absolutely honest and clear about everything that I'm doing day to day basis, right? And sharing updates with my supervisor on where I am currently with whatever tasks that have been assigned to me, and letting
Hmm.
my supervisor know well in advance if I feel that there's going to be a delay in any of the tasks that I'm supposed to perform, because my responsibility and my deliverables put into motion another set of deliverables at their end. And if there's a delay, I need to communicate it at the right time. So I
Hmm.
believe communication, quick communication, letting them know exactly what's happening. So a lot of honesty comes into the picture. But it
Hmm.
also depends on what kind of a supervisor you have, right? Like I'm lucky I've had more good than bad supervisors in my career. So
Hmm.
that way it's been easier to sort of navigate through such issues. But I've had friends who have had more challenging supervisors, and it just gets incredibly difficult then. And that's where I think so you have to once again identify that one person or a group of people that you can reach out to who are just there to listen to you. That's it.
Hmm.
Because sometimes you just need someone to listen. That's it.
Yeah. Because of course, facing a challenge in the workplace isn't always internal. It could also be external. Someone could find themselves in negative or unfortunately even a toxic workplace. So
Yeah.
how might someone learn to kind of adapt to that beyond the strategies you face and just learn to manage that environment?
Wow, I think so. One of the key things, if you are ever stuck in a situation where you are working in a toxic environment, is to while you're working, try and figure out different work opportunities out there, right? Because the moment you find something that's better, you should always take a call for yourself and move out, because you are not bound to any organization or any employer, just the way they are not bound to keep you forever, right? We see
Mhm.
layoffs happening every day, right? So that's number one, that always keep an eye out for better opportunities. And while you're still there, just focus on the deliverables, just
Mhm.
focus on completing your tasks as quickly or as timely, as much as possible in a timely manner,
Mhm.
so that there is less of negativity that you have to face. Just you know yeah, I think so, just you have to find a way to get through it, and a lot of it also depends on you being able to actively distract yourself from the negativity that surrounds the toxic workplace. So
Mhm.
just find out what works for you. Like I remember I used to, when I was working in such a place where I did not have a great time, While it was just for a very short term, I remember it was for almost 6 months, but it was torturous and it was difficult because, and this is way back, like I think so, 5, 6 years back, I don't even remember. But
Mhm.
the objective was that every weekend I would step out with my friends. We would go out for a nice dinner. We would visit a new place every week. So
Mhm.
that's what would something, sort of hit that refresh button for me, and I would be like sort of prepared to take on the next week. So you take it
Yeah.
one step at a time. You don't start thinking that, oh God, I have now joined this place. It's so toxic and I have to spend so much years, months here.
Mhm.
Just take it 1 week at a time, I guess, because when you break it down, it does help.
Yeah. And I think it's especially relevant for people who are earlier in their career, in that kind of career development stage, because, you're not at the point where you're doing your dream job, and you kind of have to
Yeah.
opportunities can come few and far, and you kind of have to take what's given to you.
Yeah, exactly. I think so. Also, not taking rash decisions is one of the key things, because I've seen a lot of my peers being, really rash with the decision of just quitting. And quitting can work in your favor or can work completely against you, depending upon how lucky you are, right? Because some people are extremely lucky. The moment they quit, they already have like two different job offers in hand. But do you really want to take that bet? That's the thing. Because I've also seen, on the other hand, people quitting and then looking for work for almost 12 months. Now, that's a big time to stay out of a job, right?
Mhm.
So that becomes a very tricky situation. So, avoiding taking those rash decisions and just trying to fight it through 1 week at a time, just trying to get through the week, thinking about the
Mhm.
weekend. That's what used to drive me in that scenario. I used to always look forward to the weekend and just try to get my time pass through
Yeah.
the week.
Yeah. So it sounds to me you're saying make some good decisions about where you decide to situate yourself, but if you make the wrong decision, just remember that you have that flexibility.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the key.
And then in that early career development phase where you're focusing on flexibility, it's really important that you're learning and developing from each role. So how can someone make sure that they're, even if they find themselves in those difficult situations, always learning and growing from each position?
I think so. That's a very good question, because at the end of the day, whenever you join an organization, you look forward to grow as an individual, both professionally and personally. And that growth comes from the kind of work that you receive. Now, if you're talking about a situation where the work that you get is itself not up to the mark and, is not what you expected, I would still suggest you go ahead and just deliver what's been expected of you. Even if you feel that you don't want to go above and beyond the responsibilities that have been given to you, just try to deliver the bare minimum, whatever is expected, and then spend the rest of the time in identifying new opportunities for yourself, because that's the only way you're going to learn. And I understand, sometimes if you go beyond your work, what's being defined as the work deliverable for you, it might not necessarily be seen in a positive light, especially in a toxic environment.
Hmm.
So at that time, you must try to understand that you have to avoid getting in that zone where, no matter how good you are at it, just do what's required of you, because that's also going to ensure two things. One is that, nobody's going to question you on whether you completed your work or not. And second, the moment you complete your work and present it in a timely fashion, it barely gives the other person an opportunity to sort of give you any negative feedback, right? Or yell at you, or maybe just demean you, or whatever, the different aspects of being in a toxic environment come with it. So that's pretty
Yeah.
much it. Just do the bare
Yeah.
minimum, focus on identifying new opportunities.
Yeah. And I think that's something people can often miss early on in their career, is how every role gets you a step of the way there, and just remembering that this isn't, when you're in that stage where you're out of your education and on your way to your dream job, that everything is, you're building skills, and you're building skills each position.
Absolutely. I think so. One more thing is that, nothing ever you learn ever goes to waste. And that's something that my father keeps telling me, since day one, since I was a child. And I used to always question him that, where is algebra going to come into use? Where am I going to use the Pythagoras theorem? Or where am I going to be differentiating and integrating stuff? Right. And this is back when I was in grade 11, grade 12. And he used to always tell me that there might not be direct implication or application of what you learn, but everything that you learn somewhere or the other in life is going to come to use. And you might not realize it. It's probably just going to pass you by, but it's going to come to use. So
Hmm.
that's the thing, irrespective of what kind of environment you're working in, or whether it's good or bad, just try to sort of learn whatever you can. Stay observant is one of the key things I would say, because the moment you stay observant and you engage and interact with your colleague, you automatically start picking up things on what they are doing or how they are doing it. Now, that's another thing that I actively do and have been doing it since the starting of my career. I have always tried to show interest or always taken interest into things that are beyond my scope of work. So if it's events, if it's digital marketing, it's PR, communications, which is very different than the sales that I'm doing, right? I would still take interest because I want to learn. Similar with operations, supply chain, etc. Anytime I've
Hmm.
gotten an opportunity, I've sort of, dipped my feet into everything that's available to me there.
Exactly. I feel the same way as I'm a psychology student, and in my present role, what isn't useful is that I know all the different parts of the frontal lobe. But what is useful is the approach that psychologists take to projects and problem solving and what their thought processes are. So I do just want to illustrate that's another challenge that people can face is when they come out of their education and they feel that their first, whether it be an internship or whether it be just their first, professional job, that what they learned isn't directly applicable. So can you just walk us through why that might be kind of discouraging early on?
I mean, that can be discouraging early on for the very reason that you spent a lot of time learning and building that skill set and then
Hmm.
preparing for the exams and getting those good grades, etc. Right? So you hope that whatever skills you have developed, you get to implement them right away and be
Hmm.
able to deliver those results for any organization that you work for. At the end of the day, we just want to show that, we are delivering XYZ. That means we bring these kind of things to the table, right? And we are a valuable resource for the organization. So that kind of a question definitely comes along the way. Uh, Honestly, I don't have an answer for that, but I would say it's just something that you keep doing. Like you don't you after a point of time, I believe after maybe a year that you spend in the corporate, you automatically realize this that maybe not everything that you learned is going to come into effect. So it's rather better to stay flexible and remain flexible to be able to unlearn, learn, and relearn throughout the
Hmm.
journey instead of just fixating on utilizing what you learned before and applying it on what you are doing right now.
Exactly. Because education is a lot more than increasing your knowledge of a given field. It teaches you how to think and operate in and how to approach and solve problems. So how can someone take their experience in whatever they studied in their education and apply it to projects in the workplace when that connection might not be perfectly clear?
That's an interesting question because that does happen a lot of times when you expect to be able to react in a certain way, depending upon the situation that's in front of you. And this is purely based on what you have learned previously. But the way you're supposed to react is completely different in the real world.
Hmm.
So you sort of when you're on the job, when you're spending the first few weeks, as soon as you enter into the workforce, when you're spending your first few weeks learning about how the organization works, how the different employees work, the way they collaborate, that's when you will be able to identify that okay, if ABC is what I learned back in school, back in college, then maybe C is what I can apply here. A and B is something that does not seem fit into the organizational structure, into the way people communicate or collaborate, right? So
Hmm.
you start learning that as you start observing.
Of
So
course.
once again, I believe you have to keep observing to be able to make that connection between what you learned versus what you apply.
So I do want to pivot topics a bit. I just want to ask about your personal experience a bit. From early on in your career, could you share an example of a time where you unfortunately made a mistake about a project or whatever it may be as a young employee?
Absolutely. I think so. My first job itself, straight out of completing my master's, taught me a lot, I would say, because it put me into situations which I had never even imagined of. I would like to actually answer this in two parts. One is my troubles within the internal structure of the organization and what I learned the hard way. And the other is my conversation with the external stakeholders and what I learned the hard way. So
Go ahead.
internally, I remember that I was working very closely with 5 or 6 team members on a project where I was the single point of contact between the brand that we were delivering the work for and the internal team that was working on the brand brief that we had received within the agency. And I had a couple of ideas in my mind which I felt would be really nice to sort of suggest internally in the team. While in an open forum internally, we were having a discussion which had all the senior leadership of the organization and all the members working on that account, just collaborating and discussing the way ahead. I simply raised my hand and put forward 3 ideas that, okay, we can also look at A, B, C. Now, what I didn't realize was that I was not working in line with how the company structure was. I was supposed to first discuss these suggestions with my supervisor, and then we would have identified a way, we would have collaborated between the two of us to take it forward in a platform where everyone was present, so that nobody was caught off guard with that kind of a suggestion. But because I did this, I got bad reviews from my super bosses because it just sort of showed that I was not aware of the systems that existed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And hence, this also ties back to my earlier point wherein you have to have a lot of honesty and communication with your immediate supervisor, right? You have to constantly reach out to them for any doubts, any suggestions, any questions that you have. Because more often than not, it is possible that they have already been in that situation that you're currently going through, and they would know exactly what to avoid or what to do. So that's number one. Number two was me talking about a situation that I faced with the external stakeholder. So there was this another client that we were servicing who had just completed a meeting with us on a Friday afternoon. And I was supposed to send out the minutes of the meeting to everyone who had attended and been part of that meeting as an executive. But I still remember it was Friday afternoon, and soon enough we were closing up, and there were a couple of other tasks that I had to complete. And it completely skipped my mind to send out this email. On Saturday morning, I get a call from our company CEO because it was a startup. So, it was the company structure was really, I would say, flat. Yeah. So everyone was reaching out to everyone at any point of the time. So on Saturday morning, he calls me up and he tells me, "Hey, Adi, did you do this yesterday evening?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I definitely did that," because in my head I had completed all the tasks before I closed for Friday. And he's like, "Well, I can't see it. Can you check it at your end?" I'm like, "All right, I'll check it right away." And then I realized that it was still in the drafts. I had not hit the send button at all. And then I was lucky he did not yell at me or the CEO. He just explained it to me, the importance of sending out information at the right time, because it's almost like, when the matter is hot, that's when you strike, right? Because that's how deals happen in the real world. And every minute or hour lost is probably a deal lost. So yeah, that's how I learned to be more proactive and to be more aware of what I'm doing, to at least be able to identify and align my actions according to the importance and the urgency of the organization.
What's your perspective on young people who are worried about making mistakes like that early on in their career?
I think so. Everyone is. And not just young people early on in their career, but also seasoned professionals who have spent a lot of time in the corporate. But especially for early on, because I remember I used to be that kind of a person. I would probably keep it to myself at that time. I would not even discuss if I had like questions, because I would think that these are such stupid questions, so basic, that someone at my level should obviously know the answers to these questions. And why should I even take it up to my superior? So while that's a good thing, because if that makes you look up the answers by yourself using the internet, great. However, if after doing all the hard work at your end, you are still unable to identify the answers, then you must reach out to your supervisors. You must
Mm-hmm.
reach out to your colleagues who can guide you, who can help you, right? Because at least you have put in the effort to try to find out the answer, but you just couldn't get it. So try not to shy away. Try not to take a lot of pressure on yourself for knowing everything, because it's absolutely normal to not know everything, especially when you are just entering the workforce. You're not even expected to know everything, honestly. And yeah, I mean, if you find a good team that you're working with, they're always going to answer your questions no matter what.
Yeah, so just don't shy away from those mistakes. So that's where
Yeah,
you grow.
absolutely not.
Exactly. And then I always end off all episodes with this one. The one piece of advice you could give to our audience for today. So young people who are maybe feeling pressure, anxiety, or stress as they're about to begin their career, what's the one piece of advice you would want them to know?
Wow, that's difficult. But I would share something that was shared to me a couple of months ago by a very dear friend of mine. And I say this specifically for the young people who are just about to enter the workforce. Build your visibility and your credibility.
Hmm.
These are the only two words that you need to focus on at this stage of your lives, and just do things that put you out there on the map, that make you known. Identify how you have to do that. Okay. Social media, use physical events, do whatever you need to do to network with a lot of people. So build that visibility and build your credibility. So do
Hmm.
that by showcasing to the world what you're doing, how you're doing it. Share your thoughts, opinions, perspectives with people. But these two words I would want you to remember, because that's what is going to make a difference.
All right. I think that's a great note to end on. That's advice I would share with everyone. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ben, for having me. It was nice talking to you.
Thanks so much.
And I
Great
hope this
conversation.
helps everyone else.
Of course. Of course. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.